Good morning, good evening, and good night, everybody. Welcome to this Air Quality Tech Talk on developing a city-level air quality forecast in Mexico City. The Air Quality Tech Talk series covers key topics around technology, science, and air quality, with an emphasis on learning from the experiences and projects happening around WRI's offices. This is a reminder that all Air Quality Tech Talks are recorded and will be shared on the CityFix Learn Clean Air page shortly after the event. So if you want to check out past webinars or this webinar, please refer to that website. The link to that should be in the calendar invite. Today we'll have 5 different presenters, and so I'll begin introducing them. We have 2 speakers and 3 city-level representatives who will be sharing their experiences in their respective cities on developing an air quality forecast. So to begin, I'd like to introduce Beatriz Cárdenas. She's the co-lead of air quality in WRI Mexico, and she joined WRI to lead the air quality work in Mexico City and works on developing strategies and programs to accelerate the path to clean air. And prior to WRI, Beatriz was the General Director of Air Quality Management in Mexico City's Secretary of Environment. Next up, we have Armando Retama, and he's currently a consultant for WRI's air quality team, and he brings a plethora of knowledge and experience in air quality forecast development from his time as the Director of Air Quality Monitoring Program at Mexico City, where he worked to implement a citywide air quality forecast system for Mexico City, which launched in 2017. And one of the first of our city-level speakers is Valeria Suarez. Valeria is the coordinator for the Metropolitan Atmospheric Monitoring Network of Quito, and she is responsible for the establishment of the Secretary of Environment's Air Quality Laboratory. Next up, we have Monica Jaime. And she is the Deputy Director of Modeling and Analysis for Mexico City's Secretary of Environment, where she coordinates the analysis of air quality from the Air Quality Monitoring Network and has been involved in the development of the AQ modeling forecast since its inception in 2017. And finally, we have Edison Ortiz, and he is the leader of the Integrated Air Quality Monitoring System for the City of Bogota's City of Bogota's District Secretary of Environment. And with that, I'm going to pass the baton over to Armando and Beatriz to begin presenting. But first, I'd like to remind everybody that if you have any questions, to please type and send those in the chat box below, and we'll be getting to those in the Q&A session. And so with that, I'm going to pass it on to Beatriz and Armando.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Thank you everybody for joining us today for this talk. As Ken mentioned, this is a series of tech talks that we are organizing, the air quality team from WRI, with a lot of participants and colleagues from different organizations. And today we are going to talk about the experiences of air quality forecasting, developing air quality forecasting. We choose Mexico City, and Armando and myself will talk about our own experience when we were part of the Mexico air quality team. And then, as Ken mentioned, we will go over with experiences from 3 cities, from Mexico City, Quito, and Bogota, to learn how they have been doing in terms of developing and using an air quality forecast. And this is important, and this is, we wanted to learn from that because some of you know that WRI, in collaboration with many cities and GMO office, the Global Modeling and Simulation Office from NASA, we are collaborating in downscaling a model that they already are running. Next slide, please. Armando, could you pass the next slide? So, well, I just will talk very briefly, and then at the end of the talks, we will try to recap. But just to keep in mind that that when you are dealing with as an air quality manager in a city as big as Mexico City and part of the metropolitan area, air quality is part of an issue. And of course, you want to have not only the information, the real-time information about what is the air quality in that moment, so you are able to communicate that to the people who are exposed outside or inside their homes, but also you would like to know how is the air quality going to be over the next days. And this is important for 2 things as an air quality manager to apply some actions to communicate with your peers, with the rest of the authorities, but most importantly, tell people how is the air quality going to be, so you can do some actions, both all the sectors. So with that, I'll just lead to Armando, who will talk about the experience of developing an air quality forecast. That's it.
Thank you very much. As many of you know, in the 90s, Mexico City was ranked between the most polluted cities in the world. However, in the last 2 decades, a lot of improvements have been achieved, reducing in nearly 80% the concentration of primary pollutants. But the levels of secondary pollutants like ozone and fine particles still exceeding the air quality standards, and severe episodes of pollution are frequent. Going back to 2010, our ability to anticipate an episode with high concentration of pollutant was very limited. And we wanted to have a tool to forecast such events to inform citizens and environmental authorities in advance to prevent the risks. On the other hand, in the context of the air quality management, during the design of policies to improve air quality, we had limitations to evaluate the possible impact of the measures in the air concentration, and also for the evaluation of costs and benefits. With this in mind, we decided to implement a system for air quality forecasting and diagnostics. Then our first step was to know our current capabilities and identify our needs. So what did we have at that time? First, and the most important, we have the need and the motivation. We also have a reliable and updated emission inventory, a robust and reliable air quality monitoring network, and also the trust and the support from our bosses that mean we have money for the project. What did we need? First, computing power. If we wanted to run a complex numerical model that could provide results in a relatively short time, we needed computing power and processing speed. Also, multiprocessing capacity. We need high-speed communication and huge storage capacity. All this stuff installed inside of a room with environmental controlled condition and electrical and technical support. So we installed a data center, not only for our forecast system, we took this opportunity to include other needs of our environmental programs. This is a picture of the data center we installed. Even when we had a good emission inventory, we decided to review the resources, update the algorithms to calculate the emissions. We wanted to have an accurate, representative, reliable, updated, and auditable inventory emission. Also, the installation of an operation of a model is a task that a person with some advanced knowledge in Linux and good computing hardware can perform. But there is an overwhelming difference when it comes to the model being able to reproduce as accurately as possible what is happening in the atmosphere of a particular region under different meteorological and emission conditions. Here is where the science provides valuable information for the model. Knowing the atmospheric dynamics and chemistry is critical to evaluate the performance of a model. It is desirable to have information of the chemical processes that are occurring in the lower layers of the atmosphere, from the microscale to mesoscale, but also on meteorological dynamics from the micro to synoptic scales. In our case, the intensive campaigns of 2003 and 2006, coordinated by Dr. Luisa Molina, provided a lot of information about what was happening in our atmosphere. And also during both campaigns, the researchers were using and testing different model configurations that were very useful for our purposes. Obviously, we were not experts in the model, so we turned into an institution known for its work in this field. And with the collaboration with the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, we have the support and accompaniment for the installation, configuration, validation, and release of the model. They provide us a training to gain some degree of confidence and independence in the routine task for the operation of the model. In addition, we have the great advantage that sharing the same language that helps a lot when we are discussing complex topics. After 7 years and a lot of money, we got our quality forecast system. This is an schematic representation of the system. For reason of time, I don't want to go into the details, but in brief, we use the weather research and forecasting model for meteorology and the community multi-scale air quality modeling system, the CMAQ, for the chemical transformation and deposition. The models use 4 domains. The first domain is covering all the country and the interaction with the oceans. The smaller domain is covering the Mexico basin and the metropolitan area. We are running WRF for the 4 domains and CMAQ only for the 2 smaller domains. Here is the parameterization of WRF if you are interested on it. One of the most interesting things that were achieved from the collaboration with the Barcelona Supercomputing Center was the development of an emission model for Mexico City. This model let us refine allocation in time and space of the emission provided by the coarse resolution of the emission inventory. You can see here an example of how this model is reproducing the emission inventory at a very, very small level. So you can see how in the case of NOx and CO, the emissions are correlated with the road network. In the case of VOC that has a lot of sources, there is a very complex spatial distribution of the emissions. In the case of sulfur dioxide, is very limited to these industrialized areas. Post-processing of the data is the last step of the model before releasing the outputs. Through the use of statistical or machine learning-based algorithms, it's possible to eliminate systematic deviation in the data using the observation from our air quality monitoring networks. In our case, we are using the Kalman filter for the adjustment of the early values and the Barnes method for the spatial adjustment. If you are interested in these methods, you can ask Monica later. This is an example of the output from our model for sulfur dioxide. As you can see, the main source of sulfur dioxide in Mexico City is outside Mexico City. We are experiencing this fumigation by the plume emitted by a refinery and a power plant located 60 kilometers away from Mexico. So in the monitoring network, we see frequently big peaks related with this plume. You can see in the case of ozone, how the model is reproducing the behavior of ozone. During the night, ozone is depleted in the urban region. During the day, ozone is increasing, and the afternoon wind is removing the ozone. This is an example for PM2.5. PM2.5 could have different sources, primary emissions, and also secondary transformation. So you can see a very complex spatial distribution and very strong regional characteristics of this pollutant. So the model is doing a very, very good job in representing the spatial distribution for these pollutants. But how well does the model work? Well, over the last few years, we have been able to predict maximum ozone concentration in 80% of the cases during the ozone season. That is the season that is most important for us. And from our point of view, it's a very good performance. But not always the forecast does a good job. In May 2017, the model failed to predict peak concentration during an episode of pollution that triggered an environmental emergency. This caused sentience and doubts among some of our environmental authorities. The analysis of this episode revealed that some specific wind patterns and local scale and nocturnal chemistry were not properly simulated. So even if we have a regular good performance of the model, it is severely questioned whether ozone or PM2.5 are underestimated. mainly during that pollution episode. The message at that moment was, it doesn't matter how good the forecast could be, a failure at the ground moment can undermine the confidence in the model. But most important from these failed experiences is what we are learning. Currently, we know that the model has difficulty reproducing the subtle effects of the local and micrometeorological scales that have impacts on ozone production, accumulation, and dispersion. Also, the role of nocturnal chemistry in the production of reactive species that contribute to the jump start of the photochemical activity in the morning. And this brief and short-scale complex interaction between different sublayers in the atmospheric boundary layer. And these experiences give us light of what we need to improve the model. So if we want to have a better forecast, we need to know how spatial and temporal variation in the atmospheric boundary layers, sublayers, affected pollution, dispersion, and atmospheric chemistry. We need to know which is the most suitable boundary layer parameterization for high pollution episodes. Also, we need to know if the urban canopy model that we are using is reflecting these multi-scale urban characteristics of the city. In terms of chemistry, we want to know if the current chemical mechanisms that we are using in the model are explaining the production of radicals, intermediate and secondary species during nocturnal and diurnal periods. And also the role of these emergent sources in the production of secondary pollutants. During this lockdown related with the pandemic, we experienced a reduction in the emission of CO, NOx, VOCs, and these are some precursors, but ozone is not going down. So maybe these emergent sources of VOC that it's not included in the model or in the emission inventory is playing an important role in the production of ozone. So some take-home messages. So the implementation of a forecast system is not an easy task. The emission inventory is critical. The observation from your air quality monitoring networks are needed to evaluate the performance of the model. If you don't have surface data, it will be very difficult to test the model, to try to see if the model is doing a good job. And also, the availability of local information about chemistry and physics will be very important for the choosing of the best parameterization of the model. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Armando. Now we will follow listening to the experiences of, as I mentioned, 3 cities. So Monica, can you share your screen? Monica?
How I don't remember that.
You share the screen, there's a green button in the bottom.
Yeah, yes. You can see my...
Yes, we can. Go on, Monica.
Okay, thank you. Good morning and good afternoon. I'm going to present you examples of how we use air quality forecast in Mexico City. First, I would like to mention that as for any forecast air quality model, evaluate the performance of the model is important. To evaluate the performance of the forecast, we compare our forecast with air quality monitoring data. We have developed the evaluation model system. You can see the enter, and we use charts and test statistics text like Taylor diagrams, percentile charts, etc. Our model has pretty good performance of more or less 80% in ozone season. Now I will show you some examples of how we use our air quality model. One of the most important objectives of our model is forecasting high pollution events. In Mexico City, we have an air pollution contingency program that activates several actions when certain levels of pollutant are reached. Having this information in advance allows us to communicate to the citizens and well to other areas of the government so they could act on time. Some more examples of how we have used our air quality model are the following. The assessment of the environmental atmospheric contingency program, run simulation of the strategies of control in environmental management, the development of the Susceptible People Risk Index, or Know Your Number Index. This index allows vulnerable people to know in advance how air pollution is going to be the next day and can protect themselves. Assessment of the impact of fires on air quality during March and April of this year. And finally, to communicate to the different stakeholders, we have developed a forecast website where you can access the forecast for each pollutant. We have also developed a mobile app to show real-time air quality data. This application also includes air quality forecast. That's our experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Valeria, could you share your screen and tell us what is the experience from in Quito?
So hello everyone. I want to tell something about our experience in forecasting. We are starting with this new for us. Well, first of all, to say that Quito is the capital of Ecuador. We are in South America. In native language, Quito means the straight sun rays because we are located in the middle of the world. And also, we are in the Inter-Andean Alley at 2,008 meters above sea level, surrounded by Western and Eastern Andean mountain ranges that has also 5,000 meters above the sea level. Quito also has a complete, difficult relief and is a very large city. That particularity made some microclimates in the large of the city. For that reason, meteorological and air quality forecasting and also satellite measurements are difficult and very high uncertainty. Since 2003, Quito has automatic air quality monitoring network with 9 stations and also some others manual. These stations measure all the criteria pollutants and also meteorological information with a high quality data. And we have now all of the data as free. We can see the information as free in our web page. And also we determined and see that we have problems with PM 2.5 and in some cases with ozone. And also we are make some advance in inventory emissions also. Since 1 year ago, we have started to working together with NASA to improve their forecasting model with ground information, with our ground information, in order to have a city level forecast. That is a picture where we show how we are working and comparing their predicted, their modulated information with our observed data and the correction that they are made for us to improve the information. That makes that now we have a dynamic hourly forecasting maps for 9 sectors in Quito. In that maps, we can have pollutants concentrations and also air quality index in order to have the data to know what will happen in the following days. For example, in the north part of the city, we have problems with PM2, PM10 because of the characteristics of the sector and so on. And we are continue working with this, contrasting the modeling of NASA with our data in the terrain level. So the idea is to have high level resolution of the model in order to have more information and to achieve an early pollution alerts in the following years, maybe. That is, thank you very much.
Thank you, Valeria. Now we go with Edison, who will share with us some experience of Bogota, also using their air quality forecast.
Good morning to everyone. Could you see my slides?
Yes, it's just
okay.
not in the presentation mode.
Okay. We are working in air quality forecast since 2013. So in these slides, I'm going to present you the main models that we use to forecast the air quality and use the dispersion model for other purpose. We have here the CMAC model as air quality forecast model that we use data from using data from GeoChem and GeoCF as boundary condition and initial condition. We have also global emissions and local emissions to enter to CMAC model, and we have CARPO for basically fires, wildfires that affect the city. We use also WRF 999 using local topography and using GPS data, and we also could run high-speed model and stealth model as backward trajectories models. That models are important for us because in certain months of the years we were affected by biomass burning of Orinoco Basin. So it's important for us to know the process of the air masses that impacts the air quality monitoring network in the city. So that information always we were validated with air quality with data with the air quality monitoring network in Bogota, and we pretend to use more stations near the jurisdiction of the near the city. Okay. Another commentaries. We use CMAC to make the air quality forecast, but we use also WRF CMAC also model for evaluating strategies to policies and other uses. So we have also, okay, as I told you before, the fast response model when we are affect that we were not in inventory in the city, like a fire in the city to estimate the impact in the near area of that fire, and the backward trajectories, high speed and stealth model. We use 4 domains for WRF and CMAC for air quality forecast. So with missions, we use Edgar and Megan database for first domain and third domain, and we use local data for domain. We we have mined in that inventories include stack sources, mobile sources, commercial sources, gas stations, sources from construction sector. Also, we estimate a responded PM and queries in and others sources. So we could see here the distribution of PM 2.5 emissions for mobile sources and emissions from industrial stack sources. So that is the spatial behavior of the emissions in the city. Some results of that inventory of that model exercise, we have air quality forecast for the city. Also, we use Karpov model odor impacts. In this case, we have a month ago a landslide in a landfill of Bogota, and we could model the odor impact for that event. And finally, as I told you before, we use high-speed to characterize the process of air masses and crossing by the wildfires in the Orinoco Basin to know what is the influence of that wildfires in Bogota. Finally, we use reports with a digital platform to report the air quality to citizens. We have a website, and we have also a mobile app that shows the citizen the air quality measurements in the city and the forecast in every place in the city. That's it. Thank you all for the invitation. I hope I'm pleasant to respond to your questions.
Thank you so much, Edison. Now, as you have heard, we heard from how does it takes. What does it take to build air quality modeling from the experience that Armando shared, like from the beginning, being here, himself, not only the leader of that project, but also now just following up what is going on with the model. Armando also shared to us some of the lessons, and I will just recap of what he mentioned, because when I was in Mexico City, that was one of the issues. There is always the question of how good the air quality forecast is going to be. And sometimes we have a challenge to share that information, not only with the media, but also with some colleagues in other institutions, but most especially with our own authorities. We know that the air quality forecast is a good tool, but of course it's not, it may fail sometimes. So that's an important thing. Edison, could you stop? Oh, yeah, thank you. Then Monica share with us some of the uses that they are having with the model now that they have a model, not only for forecast, but also for using that model to do some analysis of future scenarios. Valeria also talked to us about the difficulties that being in the conditions of the city with high altitude, but also the good opportunity that they have having now in collaboration with the GMO, NASA, and having this model being improved. And then Edison also shared with us all the experience that they have had since 2013 using and developing here their air quality model. And he also shows to us some of the uses of air quality forecast. Not only, I mean, he shared with us a couple of examples, but I guess something that comes in all these talks is that it takes a long time. It takes a lot of effort to have a good air quality model. But then some of what we are trying to do is use this experience and share with us. And now that we are having this project and downscaling the global modeling from the GMO from NASA, what can we learn from among these experiences, and how can we use this experience to improve not only these models, but also our capacity of communicating what that means. The issue of identifying the sources and having a good emissions inventory, as well as having a strong air quality monitoring network, has been coming up. So with that, I will just open the floor for questions. Ken and myself will be having this, leading these questions. So, can we, there is a question here for, let me see. Could you please turn off your mic, those of you who haven't opened? So, well, there is a question from Jimmy Gasor. It says that for a city to build an operational air quality modeling forecast from scratch, what would you advise in terms of human capacity need? I know this is a broad, but a quick estimate of how many people will be useful. And then the other question is, do you produce your own meteorology or get from the Metro department? And how sensitive air quality modeling depend on performance of meteorological modeling? So, Armando, Monica, Valeria, or Edison, would you like to make a comment?
I'm going to take the last two questions. About the meteorology, yes, Mexico City is producing its own meteorological information for surface and vertical profiles. So we have the information to validate what the model is doing. And about the sensitivity of the air quality modeling, the sensitivity related with meteorology, we found that the model is very sensitive to small changes in the meteorological patterns. If the wind is coming from the north, the model is doing a very good work. But when the wind is coming from the south, the model tends to underestimate the concentration of ozone. So that's why we want to know what is happening, how the model is dealing with these changes in the wind patterns. About the first question, I think Monica can answer, because she has a lot of experience working with the people. And she has a very good staff doing the work with the model.
Well, my English is not good, but I write my answer to Beatriz. If she can translate, please.
Yeah, I mean, Monica says that what you need is people who who has some knowledge about computer system. Also, people who has some knowledge about Linux, statistics, Python, and Fortran. And maybe, at least based on her experiences, at least 3 to 5 people dedicated to the model. I mean, related to the model. And also, it's important just, I mean, she also mentions that, well, in case of Mexico City, they have 28 sites of meteorological monitoring stations from the Mexico City monitoring network itself. So they also have a wind profiler. So that's the information that they use. Is that right, Monica? ¿Lo cubrí todo?
Yes, and Armando asked before about the 2 and 3 questions.
Okay. There is also another question to Armando. So it says, according to your experience, what kind of VOC sources could be missing in the Mexico City emissions inventory?
Thank you. That's a great question. We don't know. So we need to look for that sources. We know that the emission inventory is not including all the reactive species that are emitted by biogenic sources. We don't know if we are covering all these emissions from household emissions, from domestic emissions. So we need to do the measurements in order to try what we are missing. We suspect that there is a lot of VOCs emissions that are not properly reflected into the emission inventory. How do we know that? Because as I mentioned, this lockdown shows that even when we stop more than 50% of the vehicular fleet, the ozone concentration is still really high. So something is emitting ozone precursors, and we don't know for where they are coming. So I think there is a lot to do in the emission inventory.
Thank you. There is also another question, and I guess is related to what you mentioned, Armando, about the stratospheric intrusion of ozone. So it says, how often do a stratospheric intrusion impact surface ozone in Mexico City?
Well, it's not so often. So we haven't seen before. The episode that we have was related with very special changes in the synoptic behavior of the atmosphere. So, but we think that this episode was also related with the presence of the El Niño. So something is making these planetary waves moving into lower latitudes and producing this deep throat that could favor the injection of stratospheric ozone into lower altitudes. So, but it's not so often. But this is something that will need to be monitoring in order to see if there is another additional source of ozone that we need to worry about.
Thank you. There is also a question, has WRF output been validated with in situ observation, and how is its performance?
I don't know if Monica wants to take these questions, but what I can say is that yes, we are validating the output from the model, not only with criteria pollutants, but also with special measurements about composition of aerosols and hydrocarbons and VOCs. And the performance is good, it's quite good.
Edison, would you like to comment with respect with the validation of WRF output in your case? There is also another question. It says, I noticed the speaker from Bogota used satellite data on fire counts to identify when pollution from regional and agricultural burning is affecting the city. Do any of the speakers regularly use satellite data of our air pollutants to constrain pollutant emissions in your models, or use satellite data for monitoring regional air quality? Does any of the speakers would like to answer this question?
Well,
Yes,
sorry.
Go ahead, Valeria.
We use also satellite information to have an idea what is happening in the region about the pollutants. We make also a chemical characterization of PM 2.5 and have information about the sources of the regional, for example. And also I want to comment something that before, we don't have experience with forecasting, and we don't have the people with some academic information about the forecasting models. So for that reason, we decide to take advantage of the NASA model in order to improve our knowledge about the forecasting what's happening in Quito atmosphere. So I want to say that because for us it's really important. With no enough knowledge and no budget to have our own model, we can use other things that already made and improve the resolution and improve the quality to take advantage of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Valeria. Monica, would you like to comment about the use of satellite?
Well, we use a global fire simulation system data, and this model we integrate to the emission model for fire and hotspots. That is the only of the satellite data that we use.
Thank you, Monica. There is another question. In Mexico, the laboratories for calibration of the atmospheric monitoring equipment are in Mexico City. So for equipment we have in other regions, we need to move fragile equipment that greatly increase maintenance costs. It is advisable to invest in the installation of our own calibration laboratory. Will you have an estimate of the needed investment for the installation of a calibration laboratory? I guess that could go to Monica or Armando.
Maybe Armando.
I'm going to take that question. Thank you. Well, if you want to get good data, we need to be sure that we are using the instruments to measure the pollution in a proper way. So we need to compare the results with a reference. If we don't have a reference, it will be really hard to be sure from the quality of the data. So yeah, you should have a reference laboratory. It should be a national laboratory or a local laboratory, but it's worth to invest money in this laboratory. If you want to have an estimate, you can send me an email with the kind of instruments that you have, the measurements that you are doing, and I can provide you a gross estimate of the cost of the reference laboratory.
Thank you. And I will go over to one of the questions of these challenges of having an air quality forecast. I mean, Valeria already mentioned that they don't have either the resources in terms of enough people to have a model running. But even though they are running a model in collaboration with GMO NASA, and that's something that we are planning to do. I mean, you don't have to spend all these years on all this time, which is great, and that's great that Mexico City has that. But what about other cities that there's an urgency of having this type of information, the forecast, and also the possibility. So I will also open the floor to some of the speakers who will mention, who would like to comment of, well, that's one pattern, and the other one is to use what is available. So I don't know if Armando would like to make a comment of what is the advantage for some cities to use this, through this collaboration, this type of air quality forecast, and probably Edison. How do you see that you already have your air quality forecast, but you are also collaborating in this cohort of cities that will use the air quality forecast from the GMO NASA team?
Well, from our experience, we don't need to spend a lot of money and a lot of time trying to build this forecast modeling from scratch. If there is something that you can use at least to qualitative estimate what is happening in your region, it will be very good. If you have money and you have the experience and the time, go ahead. But if not, this effort is very interesting. So it will be, as you saw, you will need not only the technical capacity for building a model, you will need a monitoring network, you will need good meteorological data, you need also emissions and inventory. So if you don't have all this stuff, just go ahead with this kind of approach to get information from modeling.
Edison.
Okay. Yeah. In my experience, I think technical professionals are very important because we could think that that models are used by one person or two, but we have an excellent group of technicals professionals that made it possible. Second one, I think the computer capacity is very important. It's not cheap, but it's important to make a local forecast relevant. And finally, in the last year, we learned that regional effects are very important in Bogota, for example. It's important to integrate local models and with regional models, with local air quality models, with global air quality models to get a better forecast. For example, instead we have now the Sahara dust crossing the Caribbean Sea, and part of that dust is impact directly in Bogota. Um, we can see that phenomena in GFCF model, and we have registered that impact in the air quality monitoring network in the city. So regional events are important to have in mind in the local air quality forecast.
Thank
I
you,
don't know if
Edison.
I can say something more.
Yes, please.
Okay. As a complement of what Armando says, I think that even to using JMO NASA model, it is necessary to have a air quality network with the pollutant data and also meteorological, because it's important to improve the model to have a better information for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Valeria. There are a couple of questions that are in the chat. Brian Duncan from NASA says that NASA satellite data of air pollutants, fire detection, smoke are free and publicly available. The NASA RSET provides a program, provides tutorials on how to use and access this data, and they're in Spanish too. And there's also a question, we need advice from NASA, which options will be effective for our regional air quality forecast? Can we use this model, the model that they have developed, and then smooth it using some methods, machine learning, or run the model to get higher spatial results from the model? We have problems in collecting emission data and lack of air quality stations. I don't know if Brian or Emma, just taking advantage that you are in the group, would you like to comment about this last comment? If not, we will follow up with that question. And again, just recapping some of the lessons learned of. I would like to ask to Nelson, Valeria, and Monica, some of the issues that Armando mentioned is that how do we, once we have a forecast output, and knowing that it will not be perfect always, do you have any advice on how to start teaching, sharing, and spreading the word of what a forecast, air quality forecast can be used for, or what are the experience of how can we communicate that this is a very important tool, but we have also to learn from that and work with that. Would you like to make a comment? How can we communicate better, not only to the media, to the public, but also our own authorities?
That is a very important point, but it's difficult to sometimes the government accept the model, or maybe they don't know how this work. And when the what is the name? It's possible that I speak in Spanish and you translate me.
Sí, claro, Mónica.
O sea, cuando hay datos outliers, que son cuando vienen los datos altos, incluso los modelos, pues como los chinos, también tienen problemas para identificarlos. Entonces, como la gente que toma las decisiones solo espera que avises esos datos, son, pues la probabilidad de que el modelo de esos datos altos es baja, y no solamente en nuestro modelo, sino en todo el mundo. Entonces, luego ellos no creen que el modelo sirva por eso. Entonces, es muy difícil poderles comunicar que el modelo no es malo, sino que es útil para muchísimas cosas, ¿no?
So what Monica says is that it's a challenge to communicate to your own authorities when that the model may fail, especially when forecasting outliers, those high levels. And if that is one of the use of the forecast, of course, you have to let them know that yes, they can fail, but the models, their quality models, are useful for many other things that she mentioned. So that's a difficult issue that has to be solved. How to communicate that for outliers, even other models that are available and they are publicly reachable, they can also fail on forecasting these outliers. Valeria and Edison, would you like to comment, because we're almost going to finish our webinar?
Maybe I can do something. Even for us that we are our own environmental authority, it is difficult. But with the first experience with this model, we see that, for example, in the events of the summer, of the dry months that we have, in the north part of the city, we have problems with PM10, and the model works really, really nice. And the people knows that is happening in that part. So until now, we don't have really so many problems with the model. But of course, when if we have predictions for high amount of pollutants and nothing happens, it's not easy to the boss trusting me. Thank you.
Thank you, Valeria. Edison, would you like to make a final comment?
First of all, thank you all for the invitation. I see here in the chat for possibility for integrate GFCF with for boundary condition. I'm very interested in that topic. So if we can work together, it could be better.
Thank you, Edison. So go to you, back to you, Ken, just for the final announcement.
Yeah, so just quickly, I'd like to thank both our speakers, Armando and Beatriz, for their great presentation, as well as the three other city representatives, Valeria, Monica, and Edison. Thank you all for your input. And thank you everybody else for joining this call. like I said, this webinar was recorded and will be available on the CityFix Learn. I'll send the link out in the chat right now. And I hope to see you all again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very
everyone.
much. Bye-bye.